Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second day of the Next Normal virtual event. Really exciting for the next day, for today's day with many great topics. And we will start with a very interesting fireside chat with the title Field Suggestions versus NBA versus Predictive Insights. What's working, what isn't, and what's a pipe dream. Today, together with us, we have Florent Edouard, the Senior Vice President for Grunenthal. Hi, Florent, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. All good here.
Fantastic. And Felipe from ODAIA, the CEO and co-founder from a very well-known AI and NBA company. Felipe, same question for you, and I suppose it's quite early for you, right?
Yes, it is, but it's great to be here with you, Dario and Florent. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So let's deep dive into our discussion. And the very first question which we prepared today is, as we all know, a lot of hype is generated around NBA or the next best action and predictive models. What changed in that segment compared to the pandemic period, and what do you see currently is in demand from many pharma companies, or in particular at your company, Florent? Maybe we can start with you, Felipe, because you have this whole helicopter view from different angles and different pharma companies. What is currently the biggest problem when it comes to predictive insights and analytics?
Yeah, thanks. So there has indeed been a lot of hype and experimentation and deployments of different next best action or next best engagement or best suggestions for field reps in the past few years. And what I've seen and what we've seen in our company working with so many different pharma companies is that there's mixed results. In many cases, these platforms were developed using rules-based systems. And as we all know, any rules-based system has two key flaws. One of them is time lag. When you develop the rules based on historical data, those rules become outdated perhaps 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road. And so you need to continuously keep updating if it's a rules-based system, a manual rules-based system. In other cases, the adoption by the field has been suboptimal because of probably two reasons that we've seen. Poor user experience by the reps. Sometimes they get these field suggestions delivered to them with spreadsheets, other times it's embedded inside the CRM. But there is also this element of lack of trust is what we find, is that because maybe there's lag in by the time they get them and they execute on them in the field, it's no longer relevant. So they lose trust in the system. And so they're not adopting it as much as they should be, or perhaps they are claiming that they're adopting it and entering false information back into the CRM system. So I believe what's changed over the last little while is this realization by many companies that there's that the highly prescriptive next best actions that are rules-based should be replaced with near real-time data-driven insights that reps can then augment with their own field intelligence, their own contextual intelligence, so that they can determine what is the next best engagement that they should have with HCPs.
Thanks a lot, Philip. Florent?
Well, I don't have a lot to add because I totally agree with everything Philippe said. I'm going to go expansive before going predictive on the concept, right? So first, I'm a believer in the next best action. I've implemented it in a former life very successfully. The field teams used it, they loved it because they could understand what the suggestion was about. And I think that's a key aspect that goes against the general hype of machine learning, where people sell it to you saying, because this is artificial intelligence and machine learning, no one knows how it works really, it's a black box. Personally, I don't like black box, and the field teams didn't like black box. When they could understand why the system was suggesting what it was suggesting, they adopted it. So that's the first. So that's for me really the expansive part. There are things that we can do with that. Now, on the reductive part, I think one challenge we are facing, we are really struggling in pharma, and specifically in pharma commercial, industrializing a concept that we have piloted. So you will have people who are going to spend 6 months, 9 months cleaning their data to be able to build some machine learning onto it. Then they will generate a few insights, and we think this is replicable. It is not. We need to rewire the way we do things if we really want to go into usage of machine learning. Now, exactly as Philippe said, I think there is also something that is not doable with the next best action. At least today, we have not found a partner who could mix machine learning based data points and insights coming from symbolic activities. And that's what a human being is good at doing. A human being will be good at saying this customer has looked at safety data the last 10 times. It's pointless to show him another time some safety data. Either there is something he doesn't understand in the safety data and we need to show something different, or we need to move to something else than safety data and drag the customer attention to something else. So far, I've not met a system that can do that in a complex environment like pharma marketing, like account management, for instance.
Thanks
so that's a bit for me where the challenge is in the industrialization, but also in the necessary sophistication. So we go beyond just a nice automated assistant that tells you you have not seen Dr. Dario for a month. You should go and see Dr. Dario because he's a good customer.
Thanks a lot, Florent. There is one thing and one critical aspect which really bothers me, and we spoke about that a lot yesterday during the conversations during the day one, and this is how to align the human aspect and the technology aspect, so that the reps or the field users, they actually strongly believe in those insights, and that at the end of the day, they also check those insights. So how to develop this culture, change management, behavior that people really trust in the technology. Felipe?
Yeah, I think that's a very important aspect. You know, one thing I do believe, and this came out in yesterday's discussions, is that the role of the rep is very important. It's not going to go away. And I think it goes back to what Florent just said, which is you need machine intelligence, but it needs to be augmented by human intelligence as well. And there hasn't been any implementation today that can take both of these things, blend them together into machine learning models. That field intelligence, that contextual information that they have, that they can collect in their interactions with the physicians, in learning about how they're treating their patients, maybe learning about any of the issues that their patients might be having with certain treatments. This kind of intelligence is currently residing in the heads of the reps. We need to find ways of collecting that, bringing that back in, bringing that data back in, properly labeling it, so that it can then be used for determining what the next future engagements should be for a rep perhaps that's new to a territory and doesn't really have familiarity with the physicians within their new territory. So that's when the machine model can say, all right, based on data that we've collected from the field, this is what the recommendation is, but then it needs to still be augmented with information and contextual data that the rep collects themselves from the field.
Thanks, Philip. Florent?
Yeah, totally. Building on that gathering of data that is required, I would say we have a piece of work to do on the humans that are talking to humans using the information that we provide them. So how to educate them around it, how to explain how it works, how to explain why they need to enter data in the system so that it gives them better output is also super important. But we also need to work on the people who are sitting in the head office of the affiliates or in the head office of the company, because we need those people to start to understand that the answer is not always primary market research, that the answer to a question is also how can I switch my customer from a push marketing that I'm delivering to a pull marketing. And that's where the next best action can really unleash its power. If the system can provide automatically to the customer the right information that he is looking for, he or she is looking for, then suddenly you create a better customer experience. I don't mean we need to implement chatbots everywhere. My personal experience with chatbots is generally I end up yelling and cursing at the system because it doesn't understand anything, and I'm clicking desperately, pass me an operator, I want to talk to a human. So chatbots can be useful, but they are very limited perimeter. I'm really talking about next best action based on customer input and insights, so real personalization of the experience, where we know that customer, the system knows that customer, and can serve the right content to that customer on demand without the intervention of a human. So we need to work on the people who can create that to make them understand that this is the future of pharma marketing. It's not only a question of giving tools to sales rep. Both sides are true.
Thanks a lot, Florent. Next question. We see it many times that the NBA or predictive model implementation fails at many pharma companies. So what are the limits for proper MBA implementation at a modern pharma company, or where actually to start to build everything around this NBA or the field suggestions? Florent, let's start this.
So the challenge is financial. Building MBA is not cheap. I mean, it costs some money. You will always have someone in the organization, very often the CFO, but maybe others, who are going to come and ask, okay, what's the return on investment on your technology? And if you don't think it's true, till the end, with an industrial approach, you will never be able to show any return on investment on your technology. And then comes the challenge that to be able to industrialize, there's an immense piece of work to be done in the organization. You need to produce your content in a different way. You need to tag it. You need to document your customer interactions. You need to make sure you ensure total transparency and compliance with GDPR and all those aspects so that the customer knows why you're collecting data. If he pulls out, you can't do anything anymore and you lose all the data. So getting to a stage where you have enough data to be applied, to be able to apply machine learning and do next best action requires a groundwork that is complicated. And my experience, and I would be interested to hear from Philippe on that, but my experience is that the bigger the company, the bigger the challenge. The silos, because of the personal agenda. I mean, we in Grenoble have been lucky to be a relatively middle-sized company, so we could push it through and we can embark everyone on the journey with us because we didn't have those silos to break everywhere. So I think, I don't know, Philippe, your experience working with multiple pharma, I imagine you've seen that a bit everywhere, right?
100%, Florent. Look, I think there's three key challenges or considerations that are required in order to have an optimal next best action or next best engagement project. The first one is what you just said, or one of the things you just said, which is you need good data. You need to be able to capture good data, properly label it, of course, capture it in a GDPR compliant way. You need to properly label that data. You need to properly capture every engagement across every omni-channel activity so that you're taking everything into consideration, not just siloed transactions or engagements, because that can lead to bias, right? So you need that 360-degree view of all engagements and transactions. That's the first thing. The second thing I think you need is good data-driven insights that are developed from that data. Some of it may be rules-based, but others will use predictive analytics. But going back to something else that Florent said earlier, it cannot be a black box solution. So if you do select a vendor, if you do work with outside vendors on any kind of predictive modeling, using machine learning, using AI to analyze all of those data sets and come up with insights, make sure it's not black box solution. Make sure that it's explainable. Make sure that you have full transparency on the feature importance that's coming out of those models. What's driving the output? Have it be explainable. Without that, you're just going to get yourself into trouble eventually. And what I refer to that as is next best insight, right? So if you have data-driven insights that are driven by predictive analytics and some rules-based schemas, it's really next best insight. And then you need to deliver those insights to the end user. So the third element I think that needs to be considered in any kind of implementation is a great user experience. If you're delivering these insights in spreadsheets in the inbox of your reps every Monday morning, or if you're delivering it in a CRM platform through a next best suggestion type solution, if it's not an optimal user experience. And the other thing that we found is that you need to use omni-channel for your reps as well. Omni-channel is great, and we always tend to think of it from the perspective of our customers, of the HCPs, but the user experience of the reps that are using the tools that we're bringing to them, that also needs to be omni-channel. Here's a very quick example. Reps use email, they use text, they use notifications on their phones. why not target them through different channels for the next best action or the next best insight that they need to have in front of them at a certain point in time? So user experience is really important, I think, as the third element.
I'm seeing in the chat that there's a few people who say they have solutions that can combine different type of insight. I'm interested to follow up with them, after the event to look at the solution. That's something we're gonna look at in the future. I just wanted
Florent, just follow up with us on that as well. We've got a good solution.
I just wanted on the insight aspect. There's something fundamental that differentiate data and insights. Insights for me is something that is new, something that is actionable, and something that has a wow effect, like, oh, I didn't know that, that's interesting, I can do something with that. And something that normally you create by shaping it using the why equation and going down and why and why and why and why and why. It's very complicated to get that done and explained in one sentence in a suggestion box inside an email. I totally agree with that, because there must be, if you are really on a real insight, this is something that requires a little bit of discussion and explanation. So I think, we are not yet there in terms of complete setup and organization, but we're working in that direction. And we're educating people. Yeah.
What you just mentioned, Florent, related to the insights, this certainly is a very good explanation of customer experience as well, right? So that insights leads to necessary actions from the rep, so that this leads to afterwards customer experience, right? But let's build on the limits and barriers which we see when we speak about the implementation of AI or next best action. And what I also hear many often is, in pharma, we call almost everything AI powered or that has AI, etc. Right? But at the end of the day, are the industry expectations of AI, and I believe we all can agree that AI implementation in pharma is still very low, are the expectations completely wrong, what AI can and what AI can't for our industry? Maybe, Philip, you can start with this.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people have expectations around AI from primarily Hollywood movies and what they see in the films, but that's not reality. And in reality, machine learning and AI is probably only 5 or 10% of a complete solution that needs to be implemented. If anybody comes to you and says, our solution is 100% AI driven, and that's all you need in order to drive next best action, walk away. That's not true. And it's mainly because you need domain expertise. The engineers even that are working on the machine learning platform to make sense of the vast amounts of data, they need domain expertise, because the feature engineering component of the data that's being fed into a machine learning model has to be feature engineered. You need to create data on top of the data. And that can only come with contextual intelligence of a specific domain. So you need to understand, for example, and every market is different. So you need to create different models for the US and different models for the UK and different models, because there's different formularies and there's different regulatory restrictions. There's so many different elements that have to go in. And so I think the expectations for most people are a little bit unrealistic. What you need to do is, when you do work with the vendor, and machine learning is very powerful, it can be beneficial. We use it for our platform, but it's not the platform. It's not 90% of the platform. It's probably 5% or 10%. The rest of it is feature engineering, user experience, domain expertise, the data itself, the way that it's labeled, the way that it's combined and joined with other data sets. So there's a lot of different elements that have to go into play, and it's not just AI in itself.
So there are some vendors who claim they have AGI, right? Like artificial general intelligence, which is the ultimate goal of AI, to be a conscious solution, right?
Not there yet for what we're talking about. Yeah.
I think, we have a lot of narrow artificial intelligence or artificial narrow intelligence in use cases in pharma that are working. What we don't have is general artificial intelligence that would encompass everything. And to super simplify the thing, if you have a Tesla, and I heard this one, I didn't try it myself because that's not recommended. If you have a Tesla, the Tesla has been educated to recognize a policeman. The Tesla has been educated to recognize a stop sign, but the Tesla would roll over a policeman ending a stop sign because that form is not known and not in the data set that has been used to educate the Tesla. And that's one of the challenge of going from narrow AI to general AI. You need to be able to link the both.
Exactly. And no one mastered it so far. So
well, maybe somewhere, maybe it's on the way for Philippe, probably, I imagine. It's got teams doing that.
We're on the right track, but it's going to be many years before we can get to general AI applications for what we're talking about. And by the way, I'm not going to try what you suggested on my Tesla. No way.
No, I don't think it would be advisable.
Okay. Next question. Let's speak about the trends and how do you see the future outlook. So where do you see the further evolution or revolution when it comes to NBA and predictive models? Florent?
Well, so I think it's not going to be in commercial, to be honest. I think it's going to be in real world evidence. It's going to be in clinical science. It's going to be in better selection of patients for clinical trials and these type of things, because those are closed data sets that are understandable and on which you can run algorithm that will help you make sure you design the right product for the right patient, that you find the right patient for your clinical study, and that you can prove the commercial value for the ecosystem of your new products going into the market. I would expect the payers and the governments to start to equip themselves also with this type of system to be able to understand really, do they get value for the money they are paying in the pharmaceutical landscape. But honestly, in commercial, I don't see any major breakthrough until we have found a way to get clean data stacks and the right culture in the organizations.
That's a very good point. Okay, Philippe?
So Dario, were you asking what is the further evolution of NBA or AI?
Evolution or evolution of NBA, exactly. And
NBA. Okay. I think the evolution there needs to come from true omni-channel feedback loops that are collected in real time. Right now we've got many different channels that are being experimented on for communicating with providers. I don't believe that every company is properly collecting all of the data back, properly labeling it, and then using it in feedback loops so that it can help inform insights, whether they are data-driven, ML-driven insights, or insights that reps can then drive their next best actions on. So I think that should be top of mind, is true omni-channel real-time feedback loops on data collection. And then the other one I think is the ability to collect activity, engagement, and transactional data across all channels that correlate to behavior of the HCP eventually, whether it's prescribing behavior, switching behavior, either switching out or switching into brand. All of that needs to be correlated and then fine-tuned to drive NBA. I think that's what should be driven. But then the other thing that I would end with is that NBA has been also used very loosely in the industry. And next best action, there's many different types of actions that need to be considered. And I think breaking it down is also helpful. So next best HCP, identifying the HCP that might be a rising star or a high prescriber in the coming years. How do you predict that? So it's not just next best action, it's next best HCP, next best channel, next best message. I think it needs to be broken down and looked at individually so that each one of those can be optimized. Everything rolled up together is, of course, the next best action. But that's where I think the evolution needs to be.
And if I can add one, because I forgot to mention it, I do see in supply a huge potential, in a sense that if we manage to build systems that can predict stock out, we can make sure we provide the right medicine to the right patient by rerouting the supply chain. And I think that would be a massive improvement for the patient themselves to be sure that when they get to the pharmacy, they will find the product that they need.
Thanks a lot, Florent. Well, why I ask this question is, you know it very well, Pharma speaks a lot about customer experience, and there are already some tools who claim they are not NBA, they are next best experience. So in your opinion, is it the same, just a different terminology? Because the ultimate goal of NBA should actually be to deliver insights for better customer experience, right?
Well, if I would say if the next best action suggested by the system is well implemented and is relevant for the customer, that will, of course, improve the customer experience. Now, those systems will never tell you that this customer, in fact, is dissatisfied and wants something else, unless you have a feedback loop, like Philippe was mentioning, that the customer can voice his concern and say, dear system, can you send me something else? So there's going to be, before we improve really the customer experience, there will be multiple iterations. We need to get really good at doing NBA before we have a chance to really improve the customer experience. That is my belief.
Thanks a lot. And last question, what would be the pipe dream? Maybe Philip, you can answer
that. I think we covered. I think if we execute on everything that we talked about today, in a perfect world, the rep would have at their fingertips the ability to have real-time insights, real-time, meaning even if a physician, just before they walked in to do a face-to-face visit, if a physician downloaded an efficacy report or any kind of educational material from that company's website, that rep would immediately get notified. They would know exactly what they're walking into, and that feedback loop would be real time. I mean, that would make this obviously the dream. Is the real-time insights that could be in the hands of the rep, so they know exactly what to talk about with the physician when they walk in there, because they've only got a limited time. They're in with the physician for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, not even that much sometimes. Sometimes it's 5 minutes as they're walking, between treating patients. So it needs to be very, very focused, and the insights need to be real-time in order for them to be most effective.
Well,
building along the same line, for me, the dream is to satisfy that need a customer asked me. When I asked, what do you need from me? She said, what I need from you is I'm sitting in my office. I've got a patient in front of me and I want to use one of your products, but I've got a question and I've got 45 seconds to get the answer and then explain it to the patient. I need you to meet me at that point and deliver me exactly what I need, how I need it, through the channel I want. So when we will be there, we will deliver great customer experience, we will be trusted advisors, and we'll be able to really help our customers and their patients.
Thanks a lot, Florent. With that saying, I would like to thank you both, Philippe and Florent. It was really a great conversation. The session will be also published on our official YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe and watch it afterwards. Take very good care and looking to the next one.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.